Okay, my session today will talk you through an application we were commissioned to do earlier this year and provide to a customer in the UK. The customer is a customer called James Briggs Limited, and basically, in a nutshell, they fill aerosols, and that's all they do. But they do it very well, and because they do it very well, they're the biggest in the UK for doing it. On this screen, you'll see some of the products that they fill for what they call their own brands, High Coat, etc. And they sell these, and well, they formulate them and manufacture them and fill the aerosols all themselves, and then ship them out to retailers and high street shops. You probably will, I don't know about High Coat, but the rest you'll probably not know if you're not from the UK. However, James Briggs also fill aerosols for some of the world's biggest names. The Synergy application has been managing their business for now nearly 30 years. And earlier this year, they decided some of it needed a bit of a facelift. This session is essentially going to take you through a development journey of what we did for them. Well, hey, who uses Toolkit? Let's take a quick look back into the past. Bill of Resource Maintenance. Synergy UI Toolkit in its day, and this was created probably about 15, 18 years ago. And back in its day, you know, the UI Toolkit was the user interface of choice for a Synergy developer, and especially when running on Microsoft Windows. And remember that we originally ported to Microsoft Windows in Windows 3.1 workgroups, and before that we were a flat cell-based Unix and VMS shop. James Briggs were VMS at the they were Unix at the time, and then moved into Windows, and the toolkit for them was sort of earth-shattering. We advanced the toolkit and we brought in tab containers and the like, or tab pages. Then we brought in the concept of containers. Now, we never adopted containers, or James Briggs never adopted containers here. And that was the ability of multiple controls on the same page. Although you could do it, it was pretty rather tricky to get done properly. The tab pages here allow us to drill down and see various elements of the bill of resource, depending on, once they've selected one, they can drill down into the lines and special instructions and packaging instructions and costings, etc. We'll go into more detail in these, and we'll show the sort of the before and after through the new application that we created for them. And this is BOM Toolbox, and this is the new version. So we changed the name slightly. The previous one was Bill of Resource Maintenance. This is BOM Toolbox, or Bill of Materials Toolbox. And this is because the new version provided some additional capabilities. Hopefully when you look at this, you think, does look a little bit different. Remember the different tabs on the previous slides that we showed the old version? Well, these are basically what you're seeing, the different components within the application today. Today, with the modern windowing capabilities and the development tools that we've got here, and the controls that are available to us as a developer, it's possible to show more information the user wants to see using the real estate of the desktop. Now, this application was written and is using the Infodristics controls, other control vendors are available. And one of the components available of Infodristics is the dock manager. Very simple to use, and that means the user can hide and show and move around and dock controls wherever they want. So if they want the special instructions underneath, to the left, to the right, above the formula details, they can do. It's entirely up to them. And of course, the application will remember the choices that they've chosen. So this was written in Synergy.net, and it was written from the ground up. Well, yes and no. Yes, it's a new program because it's written in Synergy.net using Windows Presentation Foundation instead of the UI Toolkit for its graphical subsystem. And yes, it's using a .NET language, Synergy.net. So the code we'll look at today will be familiar to you because it's Synergy code. It may look a little bit different if you're coming from subroutine and function backgrounds and we're looking at classes and objects and things. But no, it's not really from the ground up. And as we'll see, you'll see where we were able to leverage an awful lot of their existing code. So if we drill down to the ribbon control then from Infodristics, this gives you the same sort of look and feel as a Microsoft menuing system, really. And this replaces the menu bar and the form buttons that were available in the original Toolkit application. The ribbon control uses tabs to provide groupings of options. And here we're on the Home tab, and it provides the ability to create new bills and to save changes, revert changes, and then to perform some various options on those changes. The options within the BOM options grouping allow the user to perform actions on individual resources within the bill of materials. Things like the grayed out at the moment, because if you don't have a bill visible and actionable on, then they're grayed out. But things like moving up and down, you'll see in a few slides that when the bill's up, you can move items within the bill of material or formula hierarchy. We did implement it with drag and drop capabilities, so you could click it and drag it, but the users went, I don't know what to do. There's no indication. I don't know I can do that. And they weren't comfortable with that. So although you can do it, we also added the abilities on the menu bar so they could see it. So they can highlight an item and just clicking the up or down arrow to move it up or down the formula list. As I say, many of the options are invalid at this moment in time, and it's different visual states within the application that make them enabled when certain functions are available. I'll talk a little bit more about that show filter checkbox in a couple of slides when we see QBE, and I'll explain what QBE is. QBE is actually quite a cool feature. The application basically allows the user to assign text strings to bills. They have thousands and thousands of text strings, and the reason and these are all static text strings. They're in a file, but they're pretty static. And the reason they have a lot of text strings is because it was never really easy to find a text string. So they just always created a new text string, even though they had one that was pretty similar. Unlike the old program, where you had to come out of the program to create a new text string and go back into the program, we added the ability inside this program to automatically create text strings. And you'll see that running in a few slides. Every aspect of the UI can be moved, sized, docked, anywhere the user likes. The trouble with giving users this level of flexibility is they very quickly and very usually mess things up. And they'll hide things that they didn't want to hide, and they'll move things and scroll things away and minimize things. So we added the ability to reset the whole application screen, and that takes them back to this is here, that's there, and this is here, and you can see everything. And then they can move it around again, and then tomorrow you'll get another phone call saying they've done it all again. The printing tab does little more than print. Formula detail print takes the selected or the current bill being viewed or amended and prints it out. The printout is done using the Synergy Windows printing API. The printing code was written many years ago, and we were able to literally take it and reuse it directly with little change and inside the .NET. So we took the code, moved it from our traditional branch, referenced it into our Visual Studio, our Synergy.NET project, and literally it built almost straight out of the box. The only things we had to change, because obviously we've no toolkit, visual, we still have toolkit in the back end if you wanted it, although we do use it for opens and closing of files and things, but essentially things like putting working messages up. So we had to comment those out or if-def them out. Printing a test job is like saying, process the entire bill as though I'm going to make it and sell it to make sure everything is in order, all the components match up, we've got enough stock to do all the components, but without actually committing it to the system. And again, all this code, because there's years of logic inside that code to understand how that bill actually formulates and builds and how it interacts with itself and all the items, etc. So all that code was lifted from the traditional UI toolkit and put into the Visual Studio project. The formula option is new and was not available in the original UI toolkit program. And basically, it provides the ability to export the complete formula to Excel. To do this, we utilized a product called Gembox. I find Gembox real cool and dead easy to use. And if you want to create Word documents, Excel documents, etc., Gembox could be a really good tool for you. We use the Gembox spread control, and it's very easy to create Excel documents of any version, right up to the current version where you've got shading and coloring and images and all that kind of stuff. So, SIS Pro is a third-party package that James Briggs use. So they're not just using a Synergy application, although Synergy is at the core, they also use this product called SIS Pro. So you maintain the bill inside this Synergy program, and then you push it to SIS Pro, and SIS Pro goes off and talks to all the manufacturing machinery to say what cans are needed, what formulas you do, what chemicals, etc., and how it's going to make and fill the can. So that's when we consider a bill actually live. If changes are required to a bill for a subcomponent formula needs changing, for example, then they can create a new bill or a new revision of an existing bill. So they can never change. Once a bill's gone live to SIS Pro, they can never change it. It's set in stone. And that's a traceability thing more than anything. But they can take an existing bill and create a new revision of it, and then they can maintain and modify that as they wish. You can't delete a bill once it's gone live, once it's in a live state. And again, this ensures traceability, because you need to know that what was in a particular formula yesterday, last month, last year, last decade. So we never delete a bill. But what we call in-dev or in-development bills can be deleted, changed, because they've not hit SIS Pro. So this program allows all the management of the bills and pushes them to the SIS Pro system. The system provides two powerful search capabilities. The text search allows the user to find bills and materials that either directly reference a text code. Remember I was talking about text lines earlier. Every text line's got a text code. Or it contains a subcomponent that references a text code. And as you'll see in a minute when we show some slides, you'll see the hierarchy of a formula. As well as searching for a particular text code, the search allows you to filter and limit the results on a number of entities. You can filter on a particular BOM code or a particular item code. You can filter on descriptions or words within descriptions. You can limit the results to a specific customer. So you may want to say, I would like to see all the formulas for customer X who I have to add, aggregate base when emptying, okay? Because there may be some change to the production for aggregating the base when emptying that you need to then go and find all the bills that use that for a particular customer, because the customer's requested that you don't want to aggregate the bill the base when emptying. You want to do something else with it. So it's a very powerful search. Searching the customer is a simple list filtering capability provided by the Infodristics grid controls. We don't have sort of the traditional toolkit lookups here. All the customers are preloaded on a background thread as the application's loading. So as it's loading all the text into the memory and it's loading all the customers. It doesn't read everything from the customer, it only reads the name and address, and we can do that with sparse select. So with the Infodristics grid, as you start typing in the name or the code, the list is filtered, and you can also provide custom searches within the control. The where used search allows the user to locate a BOM or bill of material item where a particular component or again a subcomponent is used. And again, the same number of filtering options are included to allow you to filter down and really pinpoint the bills that you're actually looking for. Again, using customers and descriptions and words within descriptions. First off, we're defining where we're getting the data from, and this is a series of from objects. So we're using the Synergex select class here. Now this is obviously new code. They did have an existing code that used it read and read S and read over this file and read over this file, but we made the option, or we made the decision, because we have got the Synergy select class, to actually reinvent, or not reinvent, but revisit how we load bills from the file. So instead of using read S, we now use the select class, and it was much more efficient, especially over XF server. Now we don't need all the data in every record we find, we only need a subset, so that's where you can see we're using the sparse class to limit the data retrieved to just the fields from each from that we want. And as I say again, over XF server this had a significant impact on improving performance. Then we basically set up the joins and tell the system what data to get from where and how. We can also filter on the types of bill of material records to return based on the status that they've requested. There's basically 3 or 4 statuses. There's live, obsolete, and in-dev, or there's live and in-dev. So those are the sort of, although a bill can't be live and in-dev, it can only be one or the other, the user has the ability to select, I want to see all live and in-dev bills for a particular customer, for example. And they also have version numbers. So you may want the latest, or you may want to see a number of revisions. We need to perform some additional filtering to limit the results on the select even further, and the results will be a matching bills that we can return to the program and display for the user. So quite a bit of select logic there. The where used search is similar to the text search. The user can find all the bills that can either directly use a product or a component code, or where one of its component uses a subcomponent or item code. And again, there are additional filtering options available like the status and text comparisons. Now, we'll not walk through this code, although it is available on the live feed, but again, we're using nested select loops and processing the data. And for me, if you're accessing ISAM files, select class is the best way to do it, and writing it in Synergy is the best way to do it. Because you get complete control over what you want, when you want, how you want, and you can optimize the searches based on the select debug settings that you can run, and then tweak your select inside your Synergy code. The text search and the were used searches were new capabilities that didn't really exist in the original Bill of Materials program, in the UI Toolkit version. That's one of the reasons we called it BOM Toolbox. So yes, these are new elements using new code, but the Synergy technology is available today to access and retrieve your Synergy data, as opposed to using the traditional read-read-s. I mentioned earlier QBE, query by example, as the customer coined the phrase. And it basically is. You give it an example of what you want and it queries the database. And unlike the sort of traditional Synergy programs where you'd have a list and then you put up an input window in front of it and say, what do you want? And then you'd close the input window and display the information in the list. The QBE does it all inside the list. And the QBE line is basically the top line of your list window. And QBE is basically the ability to query the ISAM database for what you want by giving it giving the grid columns that you want to search on an example of what you're looking for. You can enter any values into the top line of the data grid, use the spyglass button, or just hit the return key. It'll then go off and perform the query by example on the ISAM database, again using select class. Once you've requested what you're looking for, the code then uses the data to search the files and return, as I say, the data. And the data gets added to the grid. So here we've entered a customer. Because they have their own products that they sell themselves as well as the products they fill, I'm using James Briggs as the customer. There's an awful lot of other customers that I could have used. But basically here we've entered a customer and the grid is now populated with all the bills that match for that particular customer. You can see columns like live and in dev and the revision number, so you can see what ones are live and what ones are in dev. There's quite a chunk of code required to enable these QBE searchings. And again, it's using the select class to build up what we want to search for based on what they enter in the top columns of the data grid. They can't actually enter or change anything in rows 3 and beyond, but row 1 is what they can change. And using the select class instead of the original inline reads, we got a significant increase in performance over what they used to have. In the footer bar down here, we added the ability to export the list to Excel. Now, you may think adding such functionality would take a lot of code, and no, not really. I mentioned a moment ago about exporting the formulas to Excel using Gembox. We didn't have to use Gembox in this instance because the Infogristics control provide the ability to easily export the contents of this list to an Excel spreadsheet. Now, the lines on code are a slightly cut down version of the actual code that you can see on the feed. The additional code you can see on the feed is required because we have that special line, that first row, which is our QBE row, our query by example row. We don't want to include that in the resulting Excel. So there's some hooks, there's some events that say which line are you working on, and you can then tell the Excel, the Infogristics control not to include a particular row or particular column in the output Excel document. Other than that, adding the ability to export from your QBE controls was as simple as a couple of lines of code, to be honest. If you remember a few slides ago, we showed you the View ribbon tab. One option on here was the Show Filter bar. This checkbox toggles the filter capabilities on the data grid on and off. A lot of customers didn't want it, even though it's a cool capability that's just built into Infogristics and you get it for free. So many customers said, oh, it's too confusing. Because they've got the QBE bar, they didn't want to see the built-in Infogristics filtering. But others did, so we toggled it. When you toggle the filtering on, you get the ability then to further filter down the data that's in the grid. And it allows you to easily pinpoint the items you want to use. And for the main production manager, he lives in this program 24/7. In fact, he's getting to the point where he actually wants a web-based version so he can run it from home without having to install it on a machine. And we're looking at doing that for him. And he's forever filtering and drilling down because he's got customers on the phone saying, I need this formula changing, this formula wants adding, we need this, etc. And they're continuously changing formulas. As I said, the filtering capabilities are provided out of the box by the Infogristics data grid and offer a variety of options, including custom filtering. So what happens when you select one of the bills from the QBE search? We see the information details in the formula viewer, which is the panel that by default is in the middle, and you can see a screenshot of it here. The formulation view presents the components in the bill in a hierarchical tree view. Again, this control is from Synergex Toolbox, and we were able to customize it a little bit by adding the shading that was requested by the customers. So as you drill down at different levels, you get a different darkness of shading. And that's what the old one looked like. So I'm hopeful that many of you, not even all of you, but many of you in the room are thinking, okay, the other one looks a bit better. It offers the same top-level information, but you can't expand the subcomponents because we didn't have that capability in an ActiveX list within Toolkit. As well as being able to drill down and view any sub-level component, we have a number of additional options available here. From the footer bar in the formula view, we can add new components. There's a number of ways of adding new components, but clicking the cross button allows you to add a new component. And a component can be a bought-in item or it can be a made item. The middle indicator tells us if the bill is locked in SIS Pro. If it is, we can't make any changes to the formulation whatsoever because that's considered gone live. If it was in development, you wouldn't see the lockdown icon. On the right-hand side of the footer, we have the ability to export the formula view exactly as we saw it in the tree view into Excel, including all the indenting and shading, which is it's a newish feature in the Gembox control, the indenting. I didn't even know you could indent in Excel, but you can. I think there might even be an image of it on the feed. As I said, this export does not use the built-in exporter provided by Synergex because we wanted to provide the additional capabilities like the indenting and the shading. The exported data also includes additional information which is not available in that tree view. So we use the Gembox spreadsheet again, or the spreadsheet control again, which is, as I say, a very simple API that allows you to easily create and manage Excel documents. And we can also delete components by literally dragging them onto this little dustbin. There is no, I think there's a delete button on the ribbon bar, but generally they seemed happy with dragging and deleting things onto the waste bin to delete them, but not dragging and dropping, moving things around in the list, which I never really did understand. As well as QBE or query by example control for the bills, we also have the same capabilities for the items. Items are product codes that are either, as I said earlier, bought-in items or components that they are manufactured, so what we call a subcomponent. And a component, as I say, is basically a subassembly made up of other items that are either made or bought in. And this is where we get the hierarchy of the whole bill from. To create a formula, we need to add items into items or components into it. So we need to be able to find those items, and we use the QBE items query grid to do that. Obviously, this has the same capabilities as the same QBE functionality, and the reason it gets that is because it's from a generic control that we just extend and then call, I want to process the item collection, or I want to process the formula collection, or I want to process the bill collection. This was the Midas version. That might have been the first time I've used the word Midas. Midas is the name of the UI Toolkit product. So this was the original Toolkit product. From the list in the background, you can click the Insert button. From here, you get the item code input form. Then from here, you can click the Drill button, and it takes you to another input form to provide selection criteria. And when you get to the list of items functionality, you can then select one. And it's a very stepped operation, and Toolkit tended to do that. You'd have a list, an input window, a drill, to a list, to an input window, to a list, to select something, to then roll all the way back. In BOM Toolbox, you have an arrow. So you've got your QBE to find the details in the list. You have an arrow. Again, we did have the ability to drag and drop onto the formula list, and the customer went, nah, I don't like that. So we added the arrow into the list. So you click the arrow, you get a very simple form that says, okay, I now know what you're adding. I can work out a few things, like the type, whether it's a base type or there's lots of different types. Tell me a quantity. You can optionally tell me run wastage and setup wastage, and click the add button, and I'll put it in. So it's literally find it, click it, enter it, add it to the formula, not drilling down and rolling back. Once you add an item to the formula, various things happen. You'll now get a BOM status at the bottom. Before, on the previous slide, that said locked in SIS Pro. Because we're maintaining this, it's now going to tell us whether it's processable. As items are added to the formula, various calculations are used to determine if the resulting formula calculates to 100%. All that code was taken from the original program. We didn't reinvent the wheel in that one. Now this is just an indication. You can save and continue editing this formula regardless of the percentage, whether it makes up 100%. But until it makes 100% and equals exactly 100%, you can't push it live to the SIS Pro system. Once changes are made to the formula, the QBE builds is locked. So we put a little lock sign up, and various options become available, so you can move things up and down the formula list. Okay? So once you're maintaining a bill, you can't then go and maintain another one. You either save it, revert the changes, abort it. There's various options to be able to get back, but all of them are a single click away. Certainly not the prettiest user interface, even for a UI Toolkit application. To provide special instructions for a particular bill, and they have 3 levels of instructions. They have instructions for the bill, and then instructions for each item within the bill. To provide the special instructions, as you can see here, for a particular bill of materials, you were presented with a tab page, or the various tab pages for special instructions, packaging instructions, etc. You could enter the number of the text item if you knew it, or you could, and most people didn't, which is why they ended up with a huge amount of text items, or you could do the drill. You can press the drill lookup button search, and you can search for a text string. So here again, we've got a form that is bringing up a second form that we have to enter something into, and then we'd get a list that we could select from, and then back out all the way back to where we want it to be. And obviously there must be a nicer way than having to go through all these levels and stepping through. Thankfully there is. First off, all the special packaging instructions are visible and not hidden between tabs. They can make these into tabs. You can drag the controls on top of each other and tabulate them if you wish, or you can move them around so you can see them all. It's entirely up to you. We're all dockable and pinnable and collapsible and all that kind of stuff. There are simple buttons that allow you to adding new text items, which is the button at the bottom that says Add New Text Item. Because we've preloaded all the text lines and they're all in the grid, they're all preloaded on a background thread as the program loads. This means we can use search and select capabilities built into the Infodristics control without having to write any code at all. So simply typing the text you require immediately filters the results. Okay? And it's not just where it starts, it can be where it starts or where it contains the word. And you simply start typing, and then you can see and double click any item, and it takes you back into the special instructions list. If you type in text that then filters out to leave no records, as in this is a new text line in this example, you're then given a button at the bottom, Auto Add Text Item. Again, this capability wasn't available in the original Toolkit program. So it doesn't exist. You hit the button, it creates the next text number, or allocates the next text code number, saves it into the text file, and then it adds it into your text list. Okay? So it's a lot simpler. You don't have to come out of the program, go into text file maintenance, add the new item, go back into your bill of materials or bill of resources maintenance as it was then. You can see the buttons. Again, they didn't want to drag and drop, so we added buttons onto each item so they can click a button to move the item up, they can click a button to move the item down, and they can click a button to delete the item. It's all very simple. And as I said, we originally provided that capability. We drag and drop, and they went, no, I don't like that. Some areas they did like it, some didn't, so we gave them the option. I think you can actually still drag and drop them as well. You know, you've got to remember the customer's always right here. In the original Toolkit program, you have the ability to add text lines for each formula item. Selecting the item in the Bowlines tab, you can then see the text items. So again, in the Toolkit version, you had to drill down and click and to see things. Another limitation is that they were limited to 5 text items for a line. The new program allows any number as we move the text out of an array in the record into a file. And actually, this was the only underlying database change that was made to enable the new program to be more functional. Okay? So they had to go back and re-engineer or redo bits of the original program to now find the text items from a text file as opposed to an array on the BOM item. So in the original program, you still have the drill capabilities. In here, The WPF version, we're able to display the text lines and refresh the data as the data grid as the user selects different items in the formula view. And again, the program provides the same text selection and creation capabilities as there was no limit to the number of text items. We remove the 5 limit. And of course, you can move the text items up and down using the fancy arrows. The final element of the application is the bill of resource properties. Generally, you would have an input form docked in the application, but didn't like that. Problem with input forms is they tend to be very static, and if you start trying to resize them, you have real problems of, well, where should the fields go and where should the prompts go, and if it's too narrow, there's not enough room, and if I make it too big, do I have to move things from down here to up here? A very fluid interface would be pretty difficult to do. So what we decided to do instead is provide a properties page. And this control is available in the Synergex Toolbox again, and basically provides a column of label and a column of value pairs. And it's identical to the properties list you find in Visual Studio. So if you're editing a control in Visual Studio, you'll have a properties list. It'll have what the meaning of the property is and what the property value is. And the nice thing is you can configure the whole property view through XAML and how the columns and the rows are each configured. So here's a bit of the XAML. This is how we define the unit drop-down selection list. The XAML combo editor data binds to a collection of options with the item source binding. Notice the target property element. This is where we bind to the named property in our data source binding. And here's the data source. In the code, you define the property to be binding to. The property allows you to define which section the property will appear. So you have different sections within your properties list. Now we're exposing a string, but the underlying database is a Synergy Alpha, so we're going to do some conversion on there. Very simple conversion. And this is what you see. This is how it looks in the actual properties list. This is the unit entry with a simple drop-down list. So you can really get powerful controls as opposed to the old way that the toolkit used to do. So you've got an input form there with all the same information, but now we've got it in a nice properties window. This was rather busy, by the way. And all the same sort of drop-downs and drills and all that kind of stuff still are available in the new version, the new properties window. And so this is the BOM Toolbox. It is a modern desktop application using powerful UI and UX tooling. The Synergex controls give you the ability to dock, pin, and lay out the user interface just how they require it. The powerful grids provide QBE, query by example capabilities, for real powerful searching of the database. The searching is obviously powered by the Synergex Select class. Property lists present a modern way of editing data in a clean and structured and grouped way. The navigation ribbon control makes the application feel like a Microsoft Office program, so the user was feeling very confident finding the way around. Everything they need to do the jobs maintaining these bills. Except, as I say, dragging and dropping. They just didn't want to do the dragging and dropping. The new BOM Toolbox application utilizes the very powerful Windows Presentation Foundation graphical subsystem from Microsoft. Don't think WPF is old hat. It is not. It is a powerful environment for building robust enterprise desktop applications. Always has been and always will be. And don't think WPF is dead because of UWP or the .NET Core. Again, it is not. UWP and WPF are very similar, and the main difference is UWP is sandboxed and built to target the device, not the desktop. .NET Core 3, which Steve mentioned about, that comes out at some point in time next year, provides access to what they call desktop packs, of which WPF is going to be one of them. So your future is secure if you're doing WPF development, whether you're using .NET Framework, .NET Core, .NET whatever it comes out from Microsoft in the years to come. The UI and the UX is built, as I've said several times, using the powerful Synergex toolsets. There are other toolsets available, Telerik, DevExpress, etc. But these we picked these basically because I said I've already got a subscription, so let's use them. These UI components provide the functionality for the data grids, the hierarchical tree views, the panel docking capabilities, the theming, the properties windows, etc. They kept the Microsoft sort of blue theme, although we do have the ability for them to change it, but none of the users wanted to. In fact, one did and got completely confused and was, I can't do anything anymore. So we had to change it all back for them, which is very simple to do. The application, as I said from the top, although it's built from the ground up, it utilizes a lot of existing code from the original UI Toolkit programs. This gives us a known starting point from which to build the application. We know the code works. It's been working for donkey's years. All the printing, for example, we just take the original code and it builds in Synergy.net and into Synergy.net assemblies that we can then call directly from the application. To be completely compatible with the rest of the system, the application uses the data in the existing Synergy ISAM data files. We didn't change any of the files other than move the text arrays out of the lines into a text file. We didn't replicate the data on any third-party databases. We needed the application to be completely compatible with the existing system, because there's a whole lot more to Midas, the product, than just this BOM Toolbox. To make the data access more efficient, we utilize the powerful Synergy select class, including the join capabilities. We could not achieve every filtering requirement just using those joins, but we have the ability to incorporate post-selection filtering and encapsulate that into our data retrieval methods that are all written in Synergy. We enable the ability to export various elements of the data in the application to Excel as required by the user. This was achieved using both the Infogristics built-in capabilities and, as I said, third-party tools like the GemBox spreadsheet. And that was the BOM Toolbox. Thank you.